We all face battles in our minds, every single one of us. But here's the thing, the struggle is often harder than we think, and it's not always what we imagine. It's not just about feeling sad or stressed. It's the overwhelming pressure of living up to expectations, the relentless cycle of self-doubt, the toll stress takes on our brains, and the constant war with the inner critic that tells us we're not enough. These battles are often invisible to the outside world, and yet they shape how we move through our day, how we make decisions, and how we see ourselves. And far too often, we try to handle them alone, believing we should just power through or that somehow things will magically get better. But the truth is, the mental struggles we face are much deeper and more complex than that. Today, I want to dive into why your mental battle is harder than you think, and why understanding this can help you break free from it. When we think about mental struggles, one of the hardest things to accept is that no one can see them. Unlike physical pain or injury, the battles that take place in our minds are invisible to the world around us. There's no cast on your arm, no visible wound to point to, no way for people to immediately understand that you're carrying a heavy load. And because of this, mental struggles can often feel more isolating and overwhelming. If you've ever felt like you're fighting a battle that no one else can see or fully understand, you're not alone. The truth is, many of us are walking around with invisible scars. We go about our daily lives, going to work, taking care of responsibilities, even showing up to social events. But inside, there's a war going on. This is a reality that doesn't get the attention it deserves. We're expected to keep pushing forward, to keep moving, to keep smiling, all while we're secretly battling anxiety, depression, self-doubt, or other forms of mental exhaustion. It's as if we've become experts at masking what's happening inside. This disconnect between what's happening inside and how the world sees you can make mental struggles feel that much harder. It can lead to feelings of loneliness and isolation. You start to wonder if there's something wrong with you, if you're the only one dealing with these internal battles. You might feel embarrassed or ashamed, as though you're supposed to be stronger than this, supposed to be able to handle it all. And this is why mental struggles are harder than we think. The fact that they're invisible makes them so much more challenging to address. You can't simply point to something tangible and say, "This is what I'm dealing with." You can't ask for help in the same way you might if you had a broken leg or a visible injury. People don't know how to respond. Often, you don't know how to express what you're going through. You might try to put it into words, but sometimes words aren't enough to explain the complex, layered nature of mental struggles. The more you try to explain it, the more frustrated you can become when others don't fully understand. There's a kind of loneliness that comes with mental health struggles because, in many ways, you're forced to carry this burden alone. There's no physical reminder to say, "Hey, I need support." There's no clear sign that says, "Please be patient with me. I'm fighting something you can't see." This makes it incredibly hard to ask for help. The fear of being judged or misunderstood can hold you back from reaching out, which only deepens the sense of isolation. And yet, we know that connection, support, and empathy are essential for healing. But how do we find them when we're trapped in a world where our struggles are invisible? So, what should we do with this invisible battle? The first thing is to recognize that you're not alone.
You're not alone.
Just because someone can't see it doesn't mean others haven't experienced it. People are walking around with their own battles, even if they look fine on the surface. The second thing is to understand that mental struggles don't make you weak. They make you resilient. They're going to make you resilient. It takes a tremendous amount of strength to fight battles that no one else can see. It takes courage to show up every day and continue on, even when you're facing a battle no one else understands. We also need to be kinder to ourselves in the process. The fact that others can't see what we're going through doesn't mean it's not significant. Our struggles are valid, even if they're invisible. Just because no one else knows what you're carrying doesn't diminish the weight of it. Recognizing that your mental battles are valid is the first step to giving yourself permission to seek help, to take a break, and to prioritize your mental health without feeling guilty. And let's also remember that even though others can't see our struggles, we can still find ways to communicate them. It might be through writing, talking to someone you trust, or simply saying, I'm struggling right now, and I don't know how to explain it, but I need some support. It's okay to be vulnerable and to ask for the help you need, even if it's hard to put into words. The invisible nature of mental struggles doesn't make them any less real or any less important. In fact, it may make them even harder to navigate, but it also makes it all the more important to talk about them, to give them the attention they deserve, and to remind ourselves that just because others can't see it doesn't mean it isn't there. So if you're battling something that no one else can see, I want you to remember this. You are not alone. Your struggle is real, and you are stronger than you think. The invisible battle you're facing doesn't define you, but how you face it, how you deal with it, that's where your true strength lies. We live in a world where expectations are high, and they're everywhere. They're in our work, our relationships, and yes, in our social media feeds. We're constantly told we should be better, do more, and achieve higher, faster, and without fail. There's this sense that we need to have it all together, at all times, and if we don't, something's wrong with us. This pressure, these expectations, are one of the most difficult parts of the mental battle that so many of us face, and it's easy to get lost in them. Let's think about this for a moment. The world tells us what we should look like, what we should accomplish, and what success should feel like. From the moment we wake up in the morning, we're bombarded with these messages. The ads we see, the articles we read, the perfectly lives we scroll through online, all of them are constantly telling us that we should be more. And yet, with every attempt to meet those expectations, we only seem to find ourselves falling short. It's like trying to fill a glass with water that has no bottom. The more you pour, the more you realize you'll never reach the end. This pressure builds over time, and what happens? We start to doubt ourselves. We start to believe that if we aren't meeting these expectations, we're somehow failing. And this constant comparison, whether it's through social media, the people we interact with, or even just our own internal measure of success, creates a perfect storm of mental strain. The more we compare ourselves to others, the more we feel like we're not measuring up. We scroll through Instagram, we see people living their best lives, and we wonder why we aren't doing the same. We start to ask ourselves, why am I not as happy, as successful, as fulfilled as they are? But what's often missing from those pictures, those posts, and those highlight reels is the real story, the struggles, the moments of doubt, and the behind-the-scenes battles that no one talks about. So, we internalize this pressure, and it builds up. It becomes this invisible weight that we carry, one that nobody else sees but everyone feels. We try to keep up, try to meet the expectations, try to prove that we're enough. But it doesn't stop there. We also feel like we can't talk about it. We can't talk about how exhausting it is to keep up with all the demands. We can't talk about the fear of failure, the anxiety, the loneliness. Because in a world that praises perfection, admitting struggle can feel like a failure in itself. This pressure leads to a cycle. We push ourselves harder and harder, trying to meet these standards, all while feeling like we're constantly falling short. The result? Mental exhaustion, burnout, anxiety. And because we don't talk about it, because we keep pushing forward without addressing it, we reach a point where it feels harder than ever to escape the cycle. So, what do? How do we break free from this? The first step is recognizing that these expectations, these shoulds, are often unrealistic. They don't define our worth. They don't measure our success. They're arbitrary standards that society has placed on us, and while they might motivate us to achieve, they also have the potential to harm us if we let them control us. The second step is allowing ourselves the grace to be human. It's okay not to have it all figured out. Figured out. It's okay to feel unsure. It's okay to not be out on the time. We need to embrace the idea that success is not a straight line. It's messy, it's filled with detours, and it's not the same for everyone. We also need to be willing to challenge these expectations. Let's start by asking ourselves, who set these standards? standards. And are they really mine? Sometimes the hardest thing is realizing that the expectations we've been chasing aren't even ours to begin with. They're someone else's idea of what success should look like. The reality is, we are never going to meet every expectation, and that's okay. What matters most is being true to ourselves and recognizing that our value isn't defined by what the world expects of us. Our worth is inherent, not based on how many things we can tick off a to-do list or how perfectly we can fit into a mold. When we free ourselves from the tyranny of these external pressures, we create space for what truly matters, living a life that aligns with our own values, desires, and mental well-being. In the end, we need to let go of the weight of these unrealistic expectations. We need to let ourselves off the hook and accept that progress, not perfection, is what truly matters. Because the truth is you are enough, not because you meet some idealized standard, but because you are exactly who you're meant to be, flaws and all. So drop these shoulds and embrace the beauty of being perfectly imperfect. When we talk about facing mental struggles, it's easy to feel like we're walking through them on our own. We may feel like the weight of our thoughts, fears, and emotions is something we need to handle by sheer willpower, or that no one will truly understand the depth of what we're going through. Footage. But here's the thing. One of the most powerful tools we have to navigate those dark moments is prayer. Now, before you tune out thinking this is just a spiritual answer, I want to dig deeper into what prayer really is, especially in the context of mental struggle. Prayer isn't some mystical or abstract practice. It's a deeply personal conversation with God, a way to connect, to find peace, to ask for help, and to experience strength we can't generate on our own. If you think about it, Jesus himself showed us the importance of prayer, especially in the hardest of times. Jesus didn't just pray because it was a religious obligation. He prayed because he knew that when life gets overwhelming, when the weight of the world presses in, prayer is a way to stay grounded. It's a way to stay connected to the source of peace and strength when everything around us feels like it's falling apart. Time and time again, we see him retreating to solitary places to pray. He understood that in the quiet moments of prayer, he could release his burdens and invite God into the deepest parts of his soul. And let's be clear, Jesus was not using prayer to avoid his struggles. He didn't pray to magically escape pain or suffering. Prayer for him was a way to stay rooted in purpose, to recharge, to find clarity, and to gather the strength to face whatever came next. Take the Garden of Gethsemane, for example. It was the night before his crucifixion. Jesus knew the excruciating pain that awaited him. And what did he do? He didn't go into the night alone. He didn't bottle up his fears or try to power through the moment. He prayed. He poured out his heart to God, even as he felt overwhelmed by sorrow. He prayed for clarity, for strength, and ultimately, for God's will to be done. And my Father, if it is possible, may this cup be taken from me. He prayed in Matthew 26:39. That's not a prayer of avoidance. That's a prayer of honesty, of vulnerability. Jesus is saying, I am struggling. This is hard. This is hard. But I trust in you, and I trust in your plan. What's powerful about this moment is not just that Jesus prayed, but how he prayed. He didn't hide his true feelings. He didn't put on a mask and pretend everything was fine. He laid it all out there. His fear, his anguish, his doubt. And through that prayer, he found peace. He found the strength to say, yet not as I will, but as you will. Prayer didn't take away his struggle, but it gave him the strength to walk through it. It gave him a connection to something greater than himself, something he could lean on when the storm of life felt too strong to face alone. We often overlook the power of prayer because we think it's just a way to ask for things. We think of prayer as a shopping list. God, I need this. I need that. But prayer is so much more than that. It's a conversation. It's a space where we can show up as our authentic selves, not pretending to be perfect, but acknowledging our needs, our struggles, and our desires. Prayer is about bringing our full selves to God and trusting that He's there, listening, loving, and offering us the peace and clarity we need to move forward. When we're in the middle of mental struggle, Prayer isn't about fixing everything instantly or finding a magical solution. It's about finding a way to connect with God, to open our hearts and our minds to His presence, and to receive His guidance. And let's be clear, this doesn't always look like long, eloquent prayers or perfectly structured sentences. Sometimes it's just a moment of silence, a whisper, or even a cry. Sometimes it's simply showing up and saying, God, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to handle this. But I trust you. And here's the thing, prayer isn't just about seeking answers. It's also about seeking peace. It's about taking the time to center ourselves, to pause from the noise, the stress, and the chaos, and to listen. Prayer allows us to reframe our struggles, to shift our perspective from the weight of our emotions to the strength of God's presence. It's in these moments that we find clarity, direction, and often a deep sense of peace that we couldn't find on our own. But let's not forget that Jesus didn't just pray for himself, he prayed for others. He was often seen praying for his disciples, for the people he encountered, and for those he was sent to serve. In fact, in the middle of his greatest trial, he prayed not only for himself, but for the people he loved. In John 17, we see Jesus praying for his disciples, asking God to protect them and guide them. Even in his own suffering, he was thinking of others and praying for their strength, peace, and well-being. This is a powerful reminder that prayer is also about community. It's about praying for others who are struggling too, offering them our support and our love, even when we're in our own moments of pain. We also see in Jesus' life that prayer is not just something we do in times of crisis. He made it a regular practice, retreating often to pray, to recalibrate, and to connect. In Luke 5:16, we read that Jesus often withdrew to lonely places and prayed. This wasn't just a crisis management technique. It was a foundational part of his life. Of his life. He made prayer a daily habit because he knew that staying connected to God was the only way to remain strong, to remain grounded, and to keep moving forward with purpose. When we find ourselves in the midst of mental struggle, it's easy to forget about prayer or to feel like we don't have the energy for it. But the truth is, prayer is one of the most powerful tools we can use in those moments. It's a reminder that we don't have to carry the burden alone, that we don't have to figure everything out by ourselves. We have a direct line to the one who knows us completely, who understands us fully, and who has the strength to guide us through whatever we're facing. So, when life gets overwhelming, when the mental struggles feel too heavy to carry, don't shy away from prayer. Don't think you need to have all the answers or that you need to be perfect. Just show up, be honest, and allow God to give you the peace, strength, and clarity you need. Because in prayer, we're not only inviting God into our struggles, we're inviting Him to show us that we don't have to face them alone. Prayer won't take away the struggle, but it will help us find the strength to face it, knowing that we are seen, heard, and loved. When we talk about mental struggle, it's easy to feel like we have to face it alone. We think that if we just try harder, if we dig deep enough, we can get through it by sheer willpower. And let's be honest, there are times when we're all told to just have more faith or to push through. But what if faith wasn't just about overcoming challenges on our own? What if, instead, faith was a tool, a powerful tool we could rely on, not to avoid struggle, but to get us through it with strength, perspective, and hope? That's where Jesus comes in. Throughout his life, he didn't shy away from talking about faith, but he didn't frame it as some abstract, untouchable idea. He made it practical. He made it personal. Jesus didn't just say, have faith. Have faith. He showed us what faith looks like in real life, especially when faced with the toughest challenges. And when it comes to mental struggles, faith isn't about ignoring the pain or pretending everything is fine. Faith is about trusting that there is more at play than just what we can see, feel, or control. It's about knowing that even in the midst of our struggles, God is present, and He's working in ways we can't always understand. One of the most powerful examples of this is when Jesus talked about the faith of a mustard seed. In Matthew 17:20, He tells His disciples, "If you have faith as small as a mustard seed, you can say to this mountain, Move from here to there, and it will move. Now think about that for a moment. He's not telling them to have massive, unshakable faith all the time. He's saying that even the smallest amount of faith can move mountains. When we're dealing with mental struggles, we often think we need a huge leap of faith to get through it. We feel like if our faith isn't big enough, if we can't muster up enough belief, we're somehow failing. But that's not what Jesus is saying here. What he's really saying is that faith isn't about the size of your belief. It's about the direction of it. It's about trusting in God, even when things don't make sense. It's about bringing what you've got, no matter how small or shaky it feels, and trusting that God can use it to help you move forward. Jesus understood that mental struggle can often feel like we're facing a mountain. It feels overwhelming, though. It feels like we're stuck, unable to move, unsure of how to even start climbing. But he also showed us that faith doesn't make the mountain disappear. Faith doesn't automatically take away the hardship. But faith gives us the strength, the courage, and the perspective we need to keep going, step by step, even when the mountain looks impossible to climb. I want you to imagine for a moment what it would feel like to take that small amount of faith, whatever you have, however small it feels, and choose to trust that it's enough. Trust that it's enough to face the mental struggles that weigh you down. Trust that even if you can't see the end of the journey, you don't have to walk it alone. Faith isn't about knowing how everything will work out. It's about knowing that even in the midst of your doubts, fears, and pain, you are held by something greater. Jesus modeled this perfectly. He didn't wait until he had all the answers, until he had everything figured out, before he acted. He trusted, even when he didn't fully understand. He trusted, even when the path ahead seemed impossible. And that's exactly what faith does. It empowers us to take the next step, even when we're uncertain about what's ahead. It's about showing up every day, bringing our smallest bit of trust, and believing that God will meet us where we are. Let's think for a moment about the times in Jesus' life when he showed his disciples the power of faith. There's the time when he calmed the storm. The disciples were on a boat, terrified of the storm that was raging around them. They were sure they were going to drown. And Jesus, who had been asleep in the boat, gets up and calms the storm with a simple word: quiet, be still. And immediately everything settles. But what happens next is important. Jesus doesn't just calm the storm. He questions the disciples. He says, "Why are you so afraid? Do you still have no faith?" 440. Now, he wasn't condemning them. He wasn't criticizing them for being scared. What he was doing was pointing out that their faith could have been stronger. They had the ability to trust him in that moment, but they hadn't fully tapped into it. And here's the kicker. Jesus wasn't angry with them for doubting. He didn't say, "You need to have more faith." Instead, he showed them that faith wasn't about having no fear. Faith was about trusting in the face of fear. It's not about having all the answers. It's about trusting even when you don't know what will happen next. Faith is the key that unlocks our ability to move through struggle. It doesn't promise that the path will be easy, that everything will make sense, or that we won't have doubts. But faith does promise that, no matter how steep the climb or how hard the struggle, we're not alone in it. The beauty of Jesus' teachings on faith is that it invites us to bring what we have, even if it's a small, fragile flicker of belief, and trust that it's enough. We don't need perfect faith. We don't need to have it all figured out. All we need is the willingness to believe, even in the darkest moments, that God is with us, that he will provide the strength, the perspective, and the support we need to navigate whatever we face. So, next time you're feeling overwhelmed, when the weight of the mental struggles seems too much to bear, remember this. Faith is not about knowing exactly how everything will turn out. It's about trusting that, no matter how small your faith may feel, it is enough. Enough to move mountains. Enough to face your fears. Enough to take the next step. Because faith isn't about you having all the answers. It's about trusting the one who does.